Welcome everyone. My name is Dennis. Been at Staria now for close to 7 years, and nowadays really focusing on Naviloq, which is our BI, FP&A, and data management solution here at Staria. And I'm joined by Juuso.
Thank you. Hello everyone, I'm Juuso. I'm a BI business partner here at Staria for 1.5 years now. My background is from different kind of business roles and data roles, and kind of started with business roles and then towards data, and that's basically how I kind of ended up here as well. So kind of a little bit about our role as business partners. The main thing is that we're the first contact point to the customer. We aim to understand their business needs and how they use data, because there's 4 of us, and basically all of us have used data in the kind of business decisions in the past. So that's why I'm here in the webinar as well. So I work with Caroline on Trinity Grain, with the main point of kind of trying to help between business and data, trying to help Caroline get everything out of Naviloq, what she needs.
Being that link. Perfect. And then of course, Caroline, really
Hi.
appreciate you taking the time. Why don't you say a few words about yourself?
Yep, so I'm Caroline. I'm the finance director at Trinity Grain, which is an agricultural business. My background is actually large corporates until I came into Trinity, and business transformation. So I've worked for some huge companies like Aviva and Motorola over the years. But I have to say, being in the agricultural sector and doing what we're doing now has probably been some of the best time in my career. And I've been here 3.5 years now, and thoroughly enjoying the challenge, and certainly the journey that we're on now with NetSuite and Naviloq. It's been, game changing in our business, and obviously we're going to come on to talk a lot about that now.
Absolutely, that's really today's topic, really about how Trinity Grain has modernized their FP&A with NetSuite and with Naviloq. So we'll definitely talk about that during this session. Just maybe a few words for anyone online who's not familiar with Staria. Staria has been around for almost 20 years already. What we do in a nutshell is that we provide global accounting and payroll outsourcing services in 50 countries. We are also the leading NetSuite solution provider in EMEA. And then we also have our Naviloq business unit, which me and Juuso are representing. And very shortly about what Naviloq is. It's a cloud-based solution combining data management, BI, and FP&A. So that is really the topic of today, and what we have the pleasure of having Caroline join this webinar to tell more about where they were when they started with Naviloq, and also a little bit on the outlook of what's ahead.
Okay.
Perfect. So I think we could get started. Really, of course, the audience hopefully wants to understand a little bit more about your background and also where you came from to where we are now. So can you a little bit tell more about grain trading, because it's quite a complex business, grain trading and storage. So what are some of the key operational and financial challenges you deal with on a day-to-day basis, Caroline?
Yeah, I think the first thing is when I came into Trinity Grain 3.5 years ago now, you walk into a grain store site and you think, how hard can it be? Well, I think I got a complete shock from that point of view. So Trinity Grain is owned by 300 farmers, and collectively across 3 large sites, we store 200,000 tonnes of grain. That can be barley, it can be wheat, it can be beans, it can be oilseed rape. And on the surface, you think, yep, that sounds quite easy. Reality is that, they're very, very different. They've got different qualities, different grades, different prices. But also, you don't know from one day to the next what that business is going to look like. So within our business, we've got 2 streams to it. One stream is around the storage of the grain, and the other stream is very much around the trading of the grain. So of the 200,000 tonnes of crop that comes into the store, around 60% of that we market on behalf of our farmer members. So we have 300 farmer members. They might bring in 200 tonnes, they might bring in 2,000 tonnes. But collectively, we work with agents and we pull that grain and we sell it on the commodities markets. We do it through agents, but we're managing that behind the scenes for our farmers. We do their fund statements. We tell them roughly what their grain is worth. We give them payments ahead of time. But there's lots of other challenges around that business. So we don't know what's going to come in. And we don't know what the quality is going to be like. We don't know if it's going to come in wet, dry. We don't know what commodities markets are going to do. We don't know a lot of what the inputs are going to be like, what the weather's like. It's a very, very unpredictable business, but yet the two sides of the business are very, very different and different challenges. You know, pricing, quantities, volumes, weather impacts, there's so much that hits us, and we don't know until it starts. So we're heading into harvest 26, middle of July. We don't really know what's going to happen. We don't know what the weather is going to be like in 3 months. We don't know what's going to happen with the price of oil in the next 3 days, never mind 3 months. So it's an industry which you can't follow trends necessarily. It's just so uncertain. It's a very uncertain industry. Going back 3.5 years ago, we didn't do anything in-house. Everything was outsourced.
Okay.
So we built the whole systems from bottom up with very, very little. And we started that journey with NetSuite back then. But from a finance point of view, a lot of the challenges are around the uncertainties, whether it's, you know, the farmer not knowing what's coming in, the cost of what's coming in, and the weather impacts and the global pricing impacts as well. So there's quite a lot of juggling to do when we're trying to plan the business. It's a very difficult business to plan.
Yeah. Yeah, now, and as you said, you were using NetSuite already before starting to work with Staria and with Naviloq, so it was quite spreadsheet heavy.
It was very spreadsheet heavy. I mean, we've got a really great operational system which runs the plant and runs the weighbridge and does everything we need to do on that side really well. But it wasn't any good for accounting. It wasn't built as such. It's built to store grain. And the reporting out of it was almost like an add-on the developers had done. So it was very rigid, quite clunky, quite slow and difficult. So you'd be downloading a lot of data in spreadsheets. It was all historical as well. So it's very difficult to really use any of that data in a fluid way. It's probably the way to describe it. It was historical, it was clunky, it was time consuming, and then it was all downloading into Excel. And we all know what happens when you're trying to build decent, you know, reports or dashboards or planning models in Excel. Not great.
Yeah, especially to a point where it becomes too big, if we put it that way.
It becomes a bit of a monster. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so it's hard to maintain that. How did that not having that real-time visibility affect you as a business?
I mean, our business again is quite hard because what comes in over the weighbridge is not necessarily what is then sold out on the market. So one of the key aspects of what a store manager does is he'll look at all the different qualities of wheat, for example, and he will blend and mix that grain to maximize how we can sell it on the open market. So what comes over the weighbridge is not necessarily what we then work with our trading partners to sell. Prices can be very different between one quality of wheat and another. In a normal year, we're not in a normal year this year, you can have a £60 difference per tonne in a normal year on 2 different grades of wheat. Now, we have 200,000 tonnes of different crops to manage. I mean, you're working with one system which has got a rigid, this is what came over the weighbridge, rather than this is what we actually have now. It was very difficult to really understand, okay, what have we got to sell, what's changing, what's moving, and so on. So we were stuck with rigid systems, really quite slow decision making, and not able to respond to changes very quickly at all.
Yeah, a lot of moving parts, a lot of different stakeholders. Yeah,
definitely.
Quite typical for any business, I would say. In today's market, regardless of a vertical, I would say. Then essentially, you came to a point where you essentially said, we need something else.
I think there were a couple of things that brought us to that? I think there's two aspects to where we were really struggling. One is in planning the business, so just the budgeting process, and the other was on KPIs and understanding what we had in stock, what was shifting, what was moving. The biggest thing for a grain store is the movement of grain and understanding that grain. Where is it moving from? How is it responding to in terms of the contracts we have? And it's very difficult having to go back into the old operational systems and pull that data, because every time you'd go in, you'd set up a report, it would take 5 minutes. But in that time, you could have had lorries moving across the 3 stores. So immediately you download that data and you create your spreadsheets, and then it's out of date.
Yeah.
So it became very difficult from the stock point of view. Trying to plan the business, I remember trying to build the model in Excel. We've got so many different inputs that it just collapsed. It completely fell over. And we don't know, like I said, what the weather's going to be like. Last year, for example, we had a drought in the UK, which meant that actually our tonnages were really low. They came in and they were really dry. That is a very different P&L from what would happen in a year where it's really, really wet. So you've got all sorts of different factors impacting your business planning. There's so many different variables. Trying to do that in Excel was horrific. Trying to do it now in Naviloq has been a game changer. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So from the stock reporting and the movements point of view, game changing, in that now all of the stores have got visibility of one set of dashboards. They can go in, drill down, have a look at their members. They can also put a lot more pressure on their members to get grain moved, because movement is king. The movement of grain is king. If we don't move it out by the end of June, we've got a new harvest around the corner. Where does the grain go? Now we've got almost that immediate visibility of where is it, what's still in the store, can we move it, can we push it through the market faster, that we just didn't have before, in much more alive and visual way than we ever had.
Yeah, no, it's of course one thing with Naviloq is that you're not then bound to only financial data, but also other data, operational data, etc. So can you talk a little bit more on how the day-to-day / the business have changed after you started using Naviloq, and how different stakeholders has seen Naviloq as a tool?
I think, again, being an agricultural business, I think it's safe to say a lot of our stakeholders in the business would say, another new system, and go and run off behind a silo. So it's taken a little bit of coaching to get them there, but for me, the game changer was when somebody who hadn't expected ever to embrace it came and said, can I have access to Naviloq now? Because she was seeing that in her day-to-day job, that she could do things so much quicker, and a member could call into the store and she could see his data immediately. She couldn't have done that previously. A member could call and see, what have I still got to move in stock? Now they can see immediately. Previously, it was a really big issue to do that. And it's been a little bit of a journey to get them there, but now we've got store managers using, the system. We've got, assistant administrators within the stores using the system. The MD is using the system every day. I've permanently got it up live on my screen. It's not, I think back to my days in financial services, whether it's a Tableau or a TM1 or whatever, something you go into occasionally. This is there on my screen all day long. And I think with some of the other store managers, and certainly our managing director, they're getting to the stage now, it's the go-to system. I need to see something quickly, they know it's there. And they're now coming to me and saying, can I get this up live on the system? So they're starting to really see the benefit now and think, okay, Caroline can put that together for me quite quickly. And I think a big point about where I am now, a year into my Naviloq journey, is how easy it is to build stuff and quickly put things together myself. So my MD asked me for something. He said, can I have this view? Can you tweak that for me? Yep, 5 minutes, went to my desk, did it. It's there, it's live for you. Fantastic, job done. And I think the store managers are now having that confidence to come and say, could I have this view, or could I look at this, or is there any chance you could put this into Naviloq for me? It's all of a sudden becoming our central hub for information. NetSuite is great, but from an analytical point of view, it's just not got that same simplicity about it that we're really starting to gain traction with Naviloq. So I'm loving it. I just get excited about it. So sorry if I get a bit excited, but it's making my job so much easier.
Yeah.
So much easier.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that our role is very much focusing on the data management side of things and
Yeah.
getting that thing working in the back end so that you have that data available and then the user interface where we then enable our users to do those ad hoc reports, etc. So
And obviously, we first start from doing something. We've agreed in the kind of sales process that you get something directly without having to kind of learn a lot.
Yeah.
But then I've really liked how Caroline has, like, from the get-go said that she wants to learn this on her own, kind of being able to build visualizations and kind of tweak things on her own. And it's been great to see how kind of actually quickly you've been able to pick it up. And like we did the latest edition for you, I think it was last week, and like next day you built a full dashboard out of it.
Yeah. No, that's amazing.
I think it is quite, once you get your head around it, I think it is quite simple. And I've used so many relational databases over the years, and quite often you almost felt that you had to understand coding in some ways to be able to really get the best out of it. This is the first time where, and I don't have a huge amount of spare time in my job, I've got 101 things I'm juggling, where I feel I can go and do something quite quickly and it's not overly complicated to do. So once I got my head around it, I think it's easy just to build and build. And Yuso has been a fantastic business partner to me, in that if I make a silly mistake or something, I know that he's always there and that there's always someone in support that will help me and help me quickly, turn around issues quickly. So Yuso, Mila being another, Staria, person who's been great and really helping me. If there's a little glitch, getting things sorted quickly and it not being some long, onerous process to get things done.
Yeah, and then also considering from the initial implementation when we start, of course, every customer that we do, we take this phased implementation approach. So it's something our team is very good at. This is the initial stuff, so that we set up the foundation in a correct way. So if you want to start bringing in weather data or new data sets, etc., it's not going to be a completely new project where it's going to take months and months on end to create something new, but really just build on that with new Lego bricks, essentially. Is of course then also reflecting within the UI or the user interface, on that no-code approach, where I usually say that if you know Excel and you know pivoting, you're going to learn Naviloq as an end user very quickly.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing that I would definitely recommend for anybody, is it is building it up gradually. So we started with the planning model, and we were under time pressure last year to do the planning model. We were heading towards another harvest. We did have concerns about tonnages and throughputs, and we knew we needed to model different scenarios because, ultimately it's a long-term survival of any business. Depends on knowing what's coming. And the Excel models just weren't working for us. So, I did put Staria under pressure to get, the model done by March, April, and I've probably got a bit grumpy sometimes. But this year, the model's there, it's working. And I took 9 different scenarios to the board yesterday. And it wasn't horrific to do. I had my base case, and then I was able to, again, with a little bit of Yuso's help, create the different scenarios. And I mean, a little bit, it wasn't, I didn't have to draw on Yuso that much at all. But when I did, he was there. And be able to go to the board yesterday and summarize 9 different scenarios, 3 different, throughput scenarios, 3 different weather scenarios for each level of throughput, modeling different oil scenarios, because it's a massive problem for us this year. But looking at the impact of what's happening with oil prices and how that hits us, and how we then have to change our drying scales. So I think I'd have been tearing my hair out now if I hadn't had Naviloq to prepare that planning brief for the board yesterday. So from that point of view, it's been a huge step forward in terms of how we plan. Just being able to know that I could go in this afternoon and do another 6 scenarios, and it wouldn't be, not that I plan to, but I know it wouldn't be a horrible problem, and I know I wouldn't be worrying about another 15 tabs in an Excel document that you're then having to make sure your totals add up. So it's just the stability of that has made planning I'm not going to say a breeze because it's not in this business, but much, much easier.
Perfect. Is there any examples that you would like to share, like practical examples on how you use Naviloq on a day-to-day?
Yeah, I mean, I put together a little bit of a dashboard on some of the things that we are using day to day. So I'll just share that now.
Lovely.
And here. So hopefully that's going to come up okay. Yep, there we are. So,
Perfect,
so what I've tried to do in this is just go through some of it's almost, I've tried to do it as a storyboard of how my business works. So if we look at this very first slide, it's looking at the commitments. So ahead of harvest, we'll say to our members, what do you think your crops are going to look like this year? They don't really know. They are going to look at obviously what they've planted, what their average yields look like. They're probably, after last year when we had a drought, very cautious. But what Naviloq can do, and again, because we have the base data in NetSuite, we've now built all of the commitments in. So you can see on this here that we've got the 25 commitments in by member, and we've pulled the 26 commitments in, and we can see where the commitments have changed. Now, part of this might be farmer error. They're not always the best when it comes to getting data in. It also tells us who hasn't put commitments in yet, and we can get on the phone to them very, very quickly now and see, is there a problem? Are you okay? Are you still farming? But also it starts to give us an indication of what they're bringing in. So you can see on the right here, and the different types of crops that can come in, the different grades of, say, wheat. But what this helps me to do as well, and helps the store managers, is start the site planning. So, this year we know is going to be a big wheat year. Last year was a big barley year. So the guys can then start to think about, right, okay, are we going to just put all of the oilseed rape at Membry, for example? Are we going to focus on wheat being at the Mitchell-Deaver site? Should we focus on oats at Shrewton? But by having this earlier visibility, they can see quite quickly, right, this is coming in here. Okay, what do we do? Do we start to move around in the sites? But what we can also do over here in the filters, if I just want to look at one site, I'll just go in here now, and I'll say, just show me Mitchell-Deaver site. And then I can just see, look at my one site, how that dynamic changes. So for Bill, who's store manager at Mitchell-Deaver, he can go in now and he can see, I'll just put that filter off again. Side there. So Bill can see where it's a bit slower. He can see where some of his members have dropped on their tonnages. He can get on the phone to them and say, okay, what's the problem? Are you just undercalling because you're worried about your yields? Or, the flip side, he might look and say, well, that's really high if they put something wrong in the system. But then he can start to say, I've got my 40 big, huge silos. How am I going to plan on where I put my different crops? Without Naviloq, it is very much a case of going in, running old reports that do not have this level of detail easily, and they just don't have the time to do it. Now they've got a far more visual representation of what the intakes are like. And also over years, we'll now start to build up. So we've got 25 commitments, 26 commitments. Over time, we'll build up 3, 4, 5 years data. We can start seeing where members are perhaps going to retire from farming, or where they're looking at different crop rotations, and that might change our storage plans. There's so many different things. So I'm just going to change that back to all stores. Just literally go in there, take that off, and then that's back to all stores. Moving into the harvest period, now what we then have is those commitments. So this is last year's harvest. Those commitments you can see here, the Mitchell-Deaver store 54, the Shrewton store 81, and the Membry store 29. This is what actually came in. You then look at the blue line, that's what we had expected. So straight away, and the guys almost got quite competitive last year watching how the crop was coming in against their commitments. It got quite funny, but we could see quite quickly we were running behind. So it gave us an early indication that all was not necessarily well. And to be honest, because of the drought, we kind of knew that was going to happen. But where Naviloq again really helped, going down here, we then had this view. So if we look at laureate malting barley right over here in the end, the intakes pending, so that's what hadn't come in against commitments, was really high. But on feed barley, you can almost see an equal and opposite on the feed barley, which meant that what came in was of a lower quality. And again, using Naviloq, we were able to see as we were going through harvest, we could see that trend starting to take shape. The same follows on the wheats. If you can see there's lots pending, it means the qualities of wheats are not necessarily what the farmer had expected. And that could be, partly weather driven, it could be infestations. There's all sorts of things that can impact, what comes in on a crop. But again, for us, this gave us early indications that there were quality issues and tonnage issues and yield issues as we were going through the harvest, rather than in prior years, it'd almost just be like the chaos of harvest, and you kind of had anecdotal evidence that things weren't as you expected, but you didn't really know until you got to the end and you could see what was in your bins. So from a senior management point of view, again, this is giving us a huge amount more visibility as we start going through the harvest period. Then once we're actually into the year now, as I mentioned at the start, some members we will pull the grain for and sell, but some members will just bring their stock in and we will hold it on their behalf and they will move it on their behalf. Those members have to move their crop out by, if it's barley, in theory, the end of March, any other crops, the end of May. What we have here is a balance on what each member holds as what we call members' choice, that they have got to move themselves. This is all again live, linked to NetSuite. If something goes over a weighbridge, stock out, these numbers adjust. But again, what I love about this, so here at the top, at open field, I can click onto that. I can then go and do a little drill down tree, click on that and say I want to see that by grade type. Just go into here, add the grade type, and then I get this great little drill down tree. And again, I love that. I could take this right down to weighbridge ticket level if I so chose to do, so that data is there. So I can do it that way. And again, quite often we're using that to see what is, in this case, open fields still sitting on in their stock. And again, like previously, if I just wanted to see, let's just pick on open fields. I just go in here and select their name. They've got 3 different, and I could just literally see there. So again, if someone just wanted to look at that one particular member, that's all they would need to do in doing that. Take those off, close that down, come out of the filter and back there. Again, going down further, just as another visual that I use on a regular basis. So what, and this is by crop, what's, come in, what's left, what's gone out. So again, just seeing a different view from the member's point of view, what they have, what's gone in, what's gone out. And previously, again, this meant downloading probably 3 different reports, putting it into Excel, and then it was immediately out of date. This is updating every time something goes over a weighbridge. But a lot of people still like to have Excel. So here at the bottom, again, and these tables are within Naviloq, this has got the stock of each of the grades, each of the stores, the member's choice. What do we need to hold aside from that stock that we cannot sell in the pools? What's contracted? We'll look at that in a second. So what is actually, do we have contracts with our merchants to sell onto flour mills or whoever? What's left to move of those contracts, and what do we actually have available to sell? This is one we are using all the time because it gives us an immediate view of what can we go and sell now on the market. Friday last week, opportunity to move a lot more Group 1 milling wheat. We went in, had a look at this. Again, we were able to make that decision quickly, whereas previously we'd have been like, oh, I need to go and do this, I need to check that. Can you look at the physicals? Lots of changes. So again, here, and if you want to pop it into Excel, up here, export to Excel, and again, it exports into Excel in a really great format, which, unlike some systems, when you dump it into Excel, the reports aren't great. It exports really well into Excel. So just going to that one now as well. Stock movements. So again, as I mentioned, stock movements, everything in our business is about the movement of stock. Over time with Naviloq, we're going to build up data. So looking back here last year, you can see it was a wet harvest. So July, quite low tonnage, August really high when the weather improved a bit of a tail end going into September as well. Last year, dry harvest, very even, very dry, lower tonnages. What we can then monitor is look at the trends going out. And if you look at this year, it's almost following the same trends of the grain moving out. So again, we look at March there, broadly similar. We're absolutely expecting the same trends for April. So at the moment we're at 13,184. That includes everything up to probably about an hour ago. April last year, 14,214. So you can start to see that movements wise. And again, we're getting a really good understanding now of how it looks year on year, because we're starting to build up that data history. Then here, this is just looking at monthly movements. Again, just highlighting over, if I just want to look at laureate malting barley, I can see very quickly there. If I just want to look at a couple of months, I just go in and let's just say I want to just look at what's moved this year, then I can just literally highlight and unhighlight. It's quick, it's simple, and highlighting again there. So these are quite, reports certainly here that my MD is using pretty much daily to look at movements. He came out with a stat last week. The guys were panicking that we weren't moving stuff fast enough, and he went in, looked at this. He said, look, the profile is not hugely different from last year, X, Y, and Z. So having this stuff just there is making his ability to respond to maybe pressures coming from the store manager that this is worse than last year. Actually, guys, it's not. You're just feeling the pressure. But again, it just starts to help us with trends. Going into the contracting side, again, this is much more on the data side rather than the charts. We have got all of the data in NetSuite, and everything here works because the data is in NetSuite. And that's a key thing to remember. NetSuite is then connected to our operational system, which actually goes right back to the trading platforms of our marketing traders. So in here, we've got all of the contracts feeding through live. So feed barley here, we've got almost 20,000 tonnes contracted. We've already moved that much. That's left to move. That's an average of what we've got achieved, and that's the contract value. So again, this is updating live every time it moves. If the store manager wants to look and see, right, okay, what contracts have I still got stuff to move on? Click on that and he can see this is the contract ID, what's left to move. He can also see if anything looks a bit weird, so that looks like it's overshipped. These one look like they haven't yet moved. So he can go and look at the individual contracts, or this view over here. We'll just set up a different view, really straightforward different view, which looks at the month of movement. So we'll look again at feed barley here. That all looks great, it's just rounding, but then we look at February. Oh, wait a minute, there's 4 loads still to move. And they can then see it really easily, go back and say to the logistics people, guys, why hasn't this grain moved yet? And it helps us really track that the traders are, the agents are moving what they say they're going to move, because if they don't move, we can quite often have what we call a rollover penalty for the late movement of grain. So again, we're now proactive in managing where contracts are not moving on time when they should be moving. And this is really helping the store managers understand what's going to move and which months it's going to move as well. So that's, again, just trying to show the two sides of it. So the data table side and the visual side. There's also the out-of-the-box finance reports. And I think one area that we haven't really started to use Naviloq anywhere near to its fullest extent is the financial KPIs. So don't worry too much about the numbers you see here at the moment, because we haven't, fully used plans again. We've got different company structures behind. But this is all pretty much out of the box stuff, so periods, budget, difference. Going down here, here's a cash flow. So again, looking at our business model, we bring everything in and then we bill once a year. So you can see here we've got a massive spike October, November. You can see where it was cash balance actuals there, and then you can see the money going back out again as we're spending during the year. Again, this is out of the box. This is not something I've developed, so some really great reports are in there already. But looking down here again, this is a really good one showing EBITDA, and it shows again each year 22. You can see where we bill each year, and then you've got this overlying trend chart showing the prior year. So again, all out of the box reports. We're starting to use these a lot more now. My intention is absolutely that we do not produce management accounts. There's just a dashboard in Naviloq. Everything is there for us to be able to do that. So that's just a very quick run through of some of the ways that we are using it. We every day I build something, I think, oh, I could do this, oh, I could do that, and I'm adding more bits and pieces. And finance is one of the next areas I want to get into.
Yeah.
For now, we've very much been focusing on the stock and the operational side, and it has been game changing.
And that's really crucial for the business. We really appreciate you showing this, and of course, it's amazing what you as an end user is able to achieve within the platform and within the user interface. I also think a good point here to raise is that it doesn't always have to start with financial reporting, but if it's operational, if it's something else, it's very typical. So Naviloq is by no means necessarily only limited to NetSuite, but 150 different integrations now at the moment, approximately.
I think we're up to 200.
Yeah, so
wow.
That's just goes to show that we bring in financial operational data from multiple different systems, being it the major ERP solutions, HR systems, CRMs, etc., and working within a lot of different verticals. I was particularly happy last week when we posted about a few companies that we've been working with in the UK with Naviloq. Of course, Caroline, you and your team with Trinity Grain. Then, for example, Airspan, PSV, Golden Bear. So there is a lot of different kinds and types of companies and verticals that we're working within. Anything that you had from that exhibit demo?
Sorry?
Anything that you want to add to that demo? I have a few things, but I don't want to talk too much.
I think the kind of biggest thing, like we kind of mentioned earlier a little bit, that most of that is actually built by Caroline herself. We did obviously take some sessions and I've helped a little bit, but to be able to kind of do that on your own, and in this case, me getting to see that Caroline is so kind of, you know, your own data, you know your own business, you know your numbers. So like, for example, when we build something and there's something that has been off, there was actually a case of an unknown store, for example. You've been really good at spotting those, that there's something off in the source system. So you kind of, when we've built these together, you also at the same time always spot kind of, there's an error there, or maybe we need to do something in the data modeling. Maybe we need to exclude something in the data modeling. So that has been great, and kind of being able to see that how you take the ownership of your kind of data and business. I think that's a big thing here.
Yeah, and of course, then having those unknowns can also help if there's something wrongly inputted in NetSuite, for example, just going back in there and have it fixed. So giving visibility in that sense also. And of course, Naviloq's user interface is very much about visualizing the data from different stakeholders for different kinds and types of data, enabling our customers to be able to understand the data better, having the visibility and being able to drill down, etc. Can you talk a little bit more about the team at Trinity Grain, about who has benefited from it in which ways, and when we also consider that we have good user management tools within Naviloq, we have listed stock exchange companies at Staria with Naviloq. So of course for them it's very important that not everything is visible to every employee. So we take that very seriously from a security perspective. So, but can you talk a little bit about, like, from different roles on how Naviloq is being used by these people?
Yeah, I mean, basically at the moment we've got probably got about 8 or 10 people using it now. I'm not sure which, and there's only a couple of us who have the full access. So myself, the MD, and actually one of my trainee accountants who is going to become, my Naviloq expert hopefully over time. But other than that, we're setting up the dashboards. So we've got the users, but we've also got the viewer licenses, which for me is great. So for the store managers, for example, I wouldn't expect them ever to want to do their own content. They're happy just to come to me. Their job is to manage the stores. So they're currently viewers. They have set dashboards that they only have access to those dashboards. I'm setting up, my plan for this harvest is for some of our non-executive directors to be able to see the harvest charts. So some of the charts I showed there on the examples that we're using around the commitments and the intakes. This year, I'll publish those dashboards just to a couple of the non-execs and probably the chairman as well. And then longer term, my aim hopefully is that I will actually let the traders, our trading partners, have access to KPI dashboards. But again, it would only be those dashboards that are relevant. So for example, we have one merchant that has a certain group of crops, and we have another merchant that has, I think, well, just oats, but that who knows what happens in the future. What I can do quite easily is just say, right, okay, you can just see that group of crops, you can see this group of crops, and tie the dashboards right down to be just for them. But again, they'd just be viewers. And I think the user management, again, I think I had half an hour with you. So you're like, oh yeah, that makes absolute sense. So went in then and just set everybody up. The same with the, the planning side of things as well. People can input certain parts, not input other parts. Salaries always being a case in point that you would want to lock that right down. So you can lock it down to planning rules as well to say, right, okay, in my case, Zena, you can plan payroll because you do payroll, and somebody else can plan, different parts of OPEX. At the moment, I plan all the revenue side of things. But again, ultimately, now that we've got the model up and running, I'd want to roll that out to somebody else. So that part is quite easy to do. And certainly the user and the viewer license rules, I think, makes an awful lot of sense.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And also, you already talked about what's ahead, and of course, considering Naviloq, with one investment, our customers are able to deal with reporting and planning. We are also, of course, looking into AI, making companies AI ready. We had HD ready back in the day, so now we also want to have that AI readiness for our customers with the data platform, and then also considering what you talked about, the security aspect on who can view what data and what kind of level of access do you want to, and within the visualizations you can preset filters and what they're able to see, etc. And of course our customers are eagerly waiting for this evening, because we actually today launched our AI controller to the user interface. So we can't ask for your feedback yet, Caroline. But
I'll soon let you have it. Trust me.
Yeah, so I'm sure our customers will love it, and that's just the first step. And really, with all what's on the roadmap in regards to AI, because it's a hot topic, but it can be a very complex one, and we see too oftenly that the data foundation is not in place. So good data eventually becomes good AI in the future. So anything else you had in mind? And of course, if you have any questions from the audience, now we have Caroline online. So I think it's an excellent opportunity to ask if you have any questions. So those could be put in the chat box. But Juuso, do you have anything? I can check my phone if we have some questions coming in.
While waiting.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, actually, this is a good reminder, actually, from myself as well, what's been happening over the past year. Because when you came in, we mostly talked about planning. Then we started talking about operational KPIs.
Yeah.
And we actually had this breakfast event this morning, and there was also a customer talking about their usage in Naviloq, and she actually there mentioned something about they came into Naviloq with a totally different idea what they actually ended up using it for, like mostly using it for. I think it's mostly just expanded, but the kind of what's the main use cases. I know it's only been a year, but has there been some sort of development in your kind of thoughts towards Naviloq, towards your kind of data, that what could be kind of good use cases in the future? Is there something that we kind of thought that we're going to use it like this, but actually this is a better insight that has come, or something like this?
I think certainly we came in with the planning being the first thing, without a doubt. And because planning had become so difficult for us with all the variables that hit, farming. But what really has taken over is the KPI and the stock and the movement dashboards. So if anything, we've actually swung very much to the operational side of the business, and that's where it's definitely having the bigger impact. And I think what the operational side has given us is much more confidence because we've got that data there. For me, the next part is actually probably the first part most people think about is developing the financial side more. Cash flow for us is huge. So even though we pull market for our farmer members, we pay out a sum of money to them quarterly. And money we get in is absolutely driven by movements. Being able to understand the movements is critical. And now we've got those movements absolutely nailed in Naviloq. We've got the contracts in Naviloq in live. We've got the contract values. The cash flow is going to be the next thing to build in there. Once you've got that cash flow in live, what it will allow, so I've got a man who looks after the marketing side of the business, what will allow Gary to do is start to look at his live cash flow and think, yep, I can put more money out on money market because we're not paying that interim payment until, you know, the end of March. I can now put out more because those movements have happened faster, or yeah, I need to maybe hold that to 1 month or 2 months because those movements have been slower. You know, he was putting some money out in the money market just at the end of last week, and the difference, even being able to put it out 1 month versus 2 months, it can be several £1,000s. And for a small business like ours, that makes a difference. At the moment, he's still creating quite big spreadsheets, which are really time consuming, just because we haven't had the time to focus. But now that we have movements absolutely nailed and contracts and contract values in Naviloq, cash flows are given. So that's the next big project. I'd like to look at possibly even having the live commodities markets data come in, so that when we're looking at our historic price data versus, you know, historic commodities markets movements, we can start to see how we're performing. So that's probably a bit further down the line yet. Certainly cash flow, expanding commitments, looking at crop and, you know, basically success of our crop marketing, pricing over time, that kind of thing is next. But it's the operational side that has made the big differences to us.
Is there
Amazing.
there?
Yes, we have some questions. I'm just going to pick the first one. As a finance leader, how or where has your own work changed the most when bringing in new systems?
I mean, I spent years in telecoms and high tech, so systems have always been, you know, I've always used good systems. Coming into Trinity, where finance was previously outsourced, we had to start everything from scratch. So really, it's been down to the success of NetSuite being the starting point, and more the evolution of NetSuite and working with Starry on how we really optimize NetSuite has meant we are offering a far slicker service to our members, and being member owned, that's really, really key. Bringing Naviloq in means that I can probably get much more up-to-date data out to our members, and ultimately from their perspective, they're now seeing, and we're getting a reputation as being one of the most professional agricultural cooperatives out there, you know. And that is down to the fact that we've got things like NetSuite, we've got things like Naviloq. It's taking us from being all, you know, typical agricultural business to actually, you know, these guys really know what they're doing. And we had quite a lot of feedback post AGM this year that just the perception of our business, because of what we've been doing with both NetSuite and Naviloq, is changing. And for me, having come from, I say, companies like Aviva and Motorola into a company who had nothing at all like this, I really feel proud of what we've achieved. And, you know, NetSuite and Naviloq are a big, big part of that. But equally, that's just the age we're in now. We've got to use these systems. We've got to be professional. You know, even agriculture has got to be professional.
Yeah, amazing. Then also, do you see it as a benefit or a downside to have your data warehouse / data management BI and FP&A in a singular solution compared to maybe the lack of a better word, the traditional setup where you have a different data lake and you have a BI system and you then have a separate FP&A solution?
I think having it all together is fantastic. And the way that Naviloq is set up for us anyway is because it's a number of data models sitting beneath it, you can pull in. So I can't remember. You can maybe answer how many data models we've got sitting in Naviloq. But when you build a dashboard, you're building it from elements of all the different data models. So if you've got it all in the one place, and you've got a far bigger data warehouse of data to access and to pull it in, and also you're using the same data models within your data warehouse, you're not going to have, using different systems, how much time have we all spent reconciling this system to this system to this system to this system? If you've got one data set, in our case, NetSuite, which does come from our operation system, but that one data set is underpinning everything, both the FP&A models and the operating models, then I don't see how that's a bad thing. You know, I think it's far more beneficial to have one set of data that you're not then reconciling all the time.
And kind of to add to that, having your planning in the same system as in Naviloq, it kind of technically basically creates its own data model, which makes it super easy to also use in reporting, like in the P&L example there, like the comparisons against budget, that it's much easier. It's possible to bring the budget from another system as well, but it's much easier when it's done in Naviloq.
Yeah. But you think about even what we're talking about with doing the cash flows. Now we're going to have what our budget is and what we think our throughput is, but we're also then going to have the contracts. We're going to have the actual movements. They're all there together, you know, in the one massive data warehouse that we can then pull from the different data models. And you know, and I'm not a business analyst, I'm a finance person, but the structure of being able to go and pull the components from the different data models within Naviloq is really straightforward. And I get once you get your head right, I know that's in my commitments table, I know that's on my balance sheet, I know that's in my planner model, I just pull it together. And the way that the team structured the initial planning model, I know it was quite a challenge for them, but now that's coming into its own because we can pull that data as we need it. And it's very well structured in the background.
Amazing. Anything else on your mind? I think this has been an excellent.
Yeah.
We're close to an hour.
Yeah. Learning things myself as well.
Yeah, perfect. You always that's a good target to learn one new thing per day, I guess. Anything else you want to add, Caroline, or should we wrap up?
I would just say one thing, and don't get hung on it. Don't get hung up on it just being for finance. It isn't. And I think the one thing that it's really changed life at Trinity, FP&A without a doubt, but actually it's on the stock and the movement side and the contracts and the visibility there. That's what is starting to really change how we do things. So finance people quite often have a habit of being hung up on finance. Naviloq's more than that. And you know, really pushing that side of that it is much more than that.
Amazing. Well, I think that's an excellent point to end this webinar. From myself and user side and the whole story and Naviloq team, everyone, of course, big thank you, Caroline, for taking the time and sharing.
I've enjoyed it.
It was absolutely amazing. And of course, thank you to the audience. We have had a good amount of people joining. So NetSuite and FP&A, BI, etc. is apparently an interesting topic. So I hope that this has given the audience something to think of, because I'm sure there is a lot of companies out there that needs to streamline reporting, FP&A, etc.
Yeah, and I'm happy to take any questions through you, Dennis, if anybody has any further questions about what we've been doing or plan to do in Trinity.
Absolutely.
That's great. Thank you.
Super. I think that's it.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Caroline.
Okay.
Really appreciate it. And talk to you later.
Okay, thanks a lot, guys. Take care now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.